Okay, hello guys. So we're now going to go over the house tool. I'm going to show how to use it and also a little bit of how it was made. This is the final outcome before we export it as an FBX to use in Unreal. This generates a house from a block out using a modular kit that then is passed through a vertex color driven surface and material variation. So let's go back to the start. We're gonna dive a little bit into the modular creation, specifically for the roofs. Originally the roofs were just flat planes with tiling tile materials, but now that I'm making nanite, I want to make physical tiles, and here is my inspiration. So this Ubisoft material and environment artist made this awesome Houdini tool, and perfect for me and my Japanese style modular kit. So some things I want to point out is that he has control over whether the ends are caps. He can control the width. It's powered by a curve, as we can see here. He can also control the length along that curve. He can control the width. He can control random rotation. He can adjust the pans. He can adjust the tiles. He's got a lot going with this one. And I strove to basically make the same tool. I did message him beforehand. So let us quickly go into Houdini. So this is my tool. We start by my tiles are made in the node because I don't actually have high poly baked ones yet. But we start with a curve, and then we can control the width. We can control the length. Now you'll notice when I increase the length, boom, the tiles have got flipped. That is because the curve that is responsible for generating the points that our tiles are placed on has an orientation attribute, and that orientation gets rolled when the curve changes length. So when you do have an issue like that, or if you're using your own tiles with their own transform, their own orientation, you can just manually change it here. So there you go. We got some tiles. Now what's next? We want caps. We can have caps. We can bring it down, bring it up, bring it along. This is a 4 meter long wall, so it's important. We'll address that in a second. So it's important that we keep stuff quite exact. So I always use 3.67 because each tile is about 33 centimeters, minus a couple for the overlap. But we can also do the same adjustment, so we can increase and decrease the pan. We can increase and decrease the tiles. This is done with a resample node. For anyone who's a bit more familiar with Houdini, also the length is controlled by a curve. And then we can bake our outcome. We've got a nice roof. But the final thing, the most important thing, was the randomizer to get random rotation. So we can whack that up. Right now, it takes each point that spawns each mesh, and it gets its orientation, and then rotates depending on which option I choose. So I've chosen pitch, but if I choose yaw, you can see that the variation is working that way. And if we change it to roll, it will look much the same. Now we want pitch. We can bring that back down to a more reasonable value. There you go. So that's a little breakdown of how to make the tiles, and then those tiles, this roof is quite simple. There is a roof process node that takes all of the geometry, acknowledges what is in a wood group and what isn't. What is wood gets remeshed, so it has more topology to work with. We use that topology to drive edge damage. That can be controlled independently as well. So this is for when I end up adding procedural damage. I'd want this part of the roof to be able to sag. I'd want these tiles to be able to be knocked off. That requires more topology to work with. So if we continue back onto the actual generator, we go to the start, I have some combination of boxes. So we have toolbox, we have small box, big box, complicated box, and let's start with toolbox. So each box variation is plugged into a box combination. Now this box combination fits whatever shape that you've plugged into it. You fit to a grid. It is advised that you use cubes anyway, or cuboids, so that this doesn't have any struggle reading the input. So same here, different box, different combination. You'll notice here that we have multiple inputs, so it's also allocated them here. Okay, so this HDA is actually at the start, inside this one, it's embedded in this one. So if we start with the small one, we can quite clearly see some points. Now, if I make them more visible by showing you their numbers and their names. So our solver runs over each corner and edge. We spawn a point, and that the corners get given pillars, the middles get given walls and windows, the centers get given floors and ceilings, and then the roofs spawn depending on whether there is another box on top. So if we look at this generated, we can see that the points have checked their neighbors. This point down here said, okay, well, there's no one below me, and I'm the lowest point, which means I must be on the floor. And there is a point above me, and there is a point to the right, and there's a point to the left, which means I'm a corner. And it became a pillar. And up here, this point acknowledges I'm also on a corner, but there is a point below me and not a point above me, which must mean I'm a roof. And then it was allocated. It references an Excel sheet and makes sure that it fits all of the if statements. And then, yeah, it chooses this point. This is a very simple generation. The walls are random, so each one is given a wall group, and then the points are randomized. So this one will just spawn as a simple wall. This one will be specifically a wall with a gap in for the window, and then also the window is added separately. So if we come to the visualize node, you'll see it says wall window here. That's actually two overlapping. That's why this is a bit more bold. This is actually wall window 400, 350, 05, and also window 400, 350, 05. So after we've generated, we can also randomize. So I will show you the randomizer. We can generate a different seed. Now this is a very small box, it is one cube, which means that there are only 8 corners to work off. So you can't get much variation out of this seed with such a small input. but you can still see some nonetheless. Let's say you want to generate a house with a door, specifically at this angle. It's on a street. You can cycle through your wall seed until you get one, or generate through your wall seed till you don't. That's what you want. Now let's do a bigger generation. So a bigger generation like this poses separate issues. So the separate issues that this comes with is that it might generate, it should generate. I have left something broken so I can show you in case it shows up. Hasn't shown up, so let's make it show up. So the risk with these larger meshes more prominent. Now there you go. Oh, saw it for a second. There you go. So these two window variations, I've deleted the mesh from the packed geometry so that they do not generate. This lack of mesh generation is caused by there not being a geometry match with the same name as the target point name attribute. So what that means is that you can either just regenerate the seed. You saw that the first generation didn't have this issue, so you can just regenerate the seed. Or there's an issue with the naming conventions, so you have to go through and manually fix the naming convention of the mesh. Or it's that the mesh is completely missing, which is what this case is. But the fact that the whole mesh is missing is because there's an issue with the naming convention. Now, there is sometimes an issue with the roof, which is what I want to create next. So this issue, because of my knowledge of the modular kit, I understand that this is supposed to be one piece. So this missing face here is not an issue with naming conventions. It is an issue within the mesh. The mesh is missing those faces. So that means that the only fix for this, that isn't fixing the actual modular piece, is just regenerating the house until that doesn't show up. Okay, so we've got random seed values. That's a requirement. I also want to show one more type of variation before moving on. Here you go. So we have, ignore this, we've spoken about that. We have a bottom corner on a box that does not have another box underneath. So this corner acknowledges the fact that it is floating by knowing where the floor is. So the floor is just wherever the bottom piece is. That's the floor. Now, these ones haven't made pillars underneath because they know that they are the floor of the building. These ones haven't made, these ones have made the pillars because they acknowledge the fact that there isn't a point below them, but they're not at the bottom of the building, which means they need a pillar that stretches from their point all the way to whatever it has in its attribute to be the floor. Okay, what else? Let's move on to, we'll use a simpler house just to make the next faster. So we have a nice house. We go through to process the UVs. We then go through to process the moss and lichen. So I can bake this outright. I've I've given it some values which I like, and it will make a vertex powered color variation. Now it's called moss lichen because it's from my tree generator. Let's just wait for this to bake. And while that happens, there you go. I'll also say the HDA also displaces points in the direction of their normals, which are these, if they have moss. So if they have moss, they get blown up a bit. This value can be controlled with the moss displays. We can also control the angle at which the moss generates with the yaw and pitch values. We can also control the threshold of the moss, the soft blend of the moss. This mostly affects how it displaces, but it also affects the color. Then we have a secondary noise offset. So this is a subtraction of moss, just to give it a bit of extra variation. And these are some more attributes that I referenced back in my tree. Now, that took maybe 40 seconds, 30 seconds to bake, and you might not want to be waiting that long every time you slightly change the float value. So I've left a box. You plug the box in. Now, as the moss is powered by ambient occlusion and direction, we can actually practice or make our preset of moss generation on this cube. So if we know where our house is going in our scene, and we know where the sun is, we know how water would have been hitting the house, we know where sediment will be building up, we can use our cube as a dummy to get those values. So in this scene, the sun is coming down from this angle, and we also have our edge damage, and there's quite a lot of moss, which means that this is maybe quite a damp area or very exposed to sunlight. But now we've got a house that's under a tree, hasn't got much sunlight, is protected from the rain, but there is a little peak of sunlight from this angle. So we can turn around the pitch. Now that's going to make it go further down. We want it from here, so now we need to rotate the yaw. Keep going. You might be able to see this. No time. Maybe not. There you go. So now the moss is generating from this. I can also want to bring that pitch value back. Okay, there you go. So now I plug my house back in. My house will recook with the moss growing from this angle, with this noise, that offset, and it would have taken a lot longer if we were doing it and waiting for this cook time with each individual change. The last point to note is that once you are happy with your generation, our moss, a little bit our moss is generating from not from cool. When we're finished, we come to our OP FBX, and I'm going to make Mossy House 1. I've chosen my file location and I save to disk. Now I can use this in Unreal. I'll probably make a separate video on that and also going over the tree. So thank you.